Call this meeting to order. I stand for a motion to approve the agenda.
I make the motion that we approve the agenda as printed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes?
Do we have?
We need to do a second.
Need a second.
Oh,
I'll second.
I'll second.
I thought I heard a second. I'm not hard. Okay, has everyone had a chance to read the minutes from October the 10th, 2018?
Yes.
I'll stand for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Now, do we have public comment? Someone want to cut them in? Public comment.
No public comment.
Okay, let's move on to action items. Do I have a motion? Go for it, Crystal.
You got to make a motion. Nobody's
make
made
a
a
motion.
motion. That's why I'm
All right,
waiting.
that's what we're waiting for. Okay, I make the motion. But I'm trying to find where it's at on here.
It's at the bottom.
At the bottom?
Way down bottom.
Way down. All right. Well, we're on a different window there.
We got it all.
Okay. All right, so this is for the special use permit encroachment at 1426 North 9th Street. I make a motion that we visit this. Is that the proper terminology?
You need a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, Crystal.
All right, so I had an owner requesting, he actually began off requesting a water meter for this property that he had just purchased. When I looked at the property, I then noticed that it was 2 storage buildings. There is not a home located on this property at all. So I asked him what was he wanting to use the water for. He said for a restroom, possibly a future dwelling site for his employee that runs, they run oil field parts out of the shops. They have parts delivered there and they take parts out to different oil field sites. He has one employee that does most of this for him, I guess, all the time. So my big concern then was that there's not a house. This is in a residential A zone, single family residential dwelling zone. So we're not supposed to have anything but home occupations in this area. We do not like to do a rezoning for a single parcel, just because it makes it very untrackable. It's hard to keep track of those zone changes like that. Our comprehensive plan has us growing towards that direction, but it also has mostly being residential, multifamily residential dwellings in that area. So my suggestion to him was to get a special use. These 2 buildings have been used for this same general type purpose for many years. The new owner was not aware. He thought it was zoned perfectly well because it had been being used as storage for another business before. We've never had any complaints from the neighbors in that area on this shop or anything, so I don't think that the business he is conducting now there is disturbing his neighborhood. We do have a 3-foot encroachment on that back building. He has had no surveys done, but if you'll look at my site plans in your packet, everything I measured showed it to be off by that much. We looked at the top line with the aerial view. And the yellow line you see up there is the fences in the other backyards. So if you were to carry that line on straight to the west, you can see where he is over. The measurements in the alley to the next fence are only 17 foot from that building to the fence. And when you go from fence to fence on down by those other homes, it's 20 foot like it's supposed to be. So I don't have any questions on what this gentleman is asking for and what we're looking at.
I had a curious question about the new structure that was built. Do we know when it was built?
With my Google Earth pictures, I dated it back to 2006 or 7, I think it was. I had that. I did.
So I was wrong. I thought
Looks like that front building was built, Google Earth first showed it in 8 of 2011. But there was no other Google photos since 2002. So in between 02 and 11 is any time it could have been built in between that time. But from everyone I've talked to, that it's been there for a while.
I was thinking it's been there quite a few years.
And the back one has been there since before it was, I didn't have that date written down, I was looking for it, but it was on back even further.
Did there used to be a house there? You know, that's what I'm kind of curious about.
Nothing on
No,
Google
there
Earth,
wasn't
as
a
far
house
as I
there.
could go back, saw a house there, so.
Just-
The furthest
that
it
his
went
home
back
right there?
was to 96, and it was just that back storage building.
Well, it's just curious if we put a storage building out there on the
Mhm.
corner lot like that.
Mhm. Yeah,
The
because to
guy that
me,
first built it, he used it as like an office building kind of deal.
Mhm.
For like, she's saying, taking other stuff out to other people.
Mhm.
That's who the original owner bought it for and built it there.
Okay, so special use permit is for
Allowing him to
Allowing-
use it
as a commercial
as
business.
a commercial business in a
as long as it's
residential
just
area.
him.
Mhm.
Okay.
Special use permits do not transfer with ownership.
No.
So if it's sold, then it's no
Then
longer.
the next owner will either have to come and do this again or make it to the proper usage.
Does the special use permit also allow for the encroachment on the alley?
No, that's why we have to give the encroachment along with the special use.
So my question now is, do we need to make 2 motions for that, or do we include it in one?
You can include it.
Include it.
But none of the neighbors had a problem with it?
Not, and I sent the letters out. I've gotten no recourse, no recall, no calls, nothing.
I did talk to the neighbor that lives in that house right there
Mhm.
earlier, because I just went out there to look at it. And they were outside and we visited for a minute. And they said they did receive the letter, so they've never had any problems. They
Yeah.
don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, because I sent letters out to all the adjacent property owners.
So it's just an oil field business? They deliver parts out of there?
Like
Mhm.
pump service.
Oh, okay. So it's not like there's
Not-
customers coming and going?
No.
Like a grocery store,
No.
restaurant?
No. And in
It's only there.
his letter, he stated all that there wasn't customers that come to his shop. He simply delivers. The trucks that deliver are not large semis. They are always a 1-ton pickup or something like that, he said, or a van. He said it's never large semis that deliver.
So
He doesn't
not
keep
just
anything.
Large freight?
Yeah, he doesn't have any large freight like that.
Did you say something about possibly moving an employee to live in there?
Yeah, well, he said that's what his thought was, is right now he wants to make a restroom for that employee, to be able to have a restroom in that back building. And he thought in the future, he would thought about making it into a dwelling unit because the lack of housing in Lovington, he's having trouble finding his employee a house to stay in.
Yeah, like a little house.
Oh, yeah, he'd have to do a whole lot to, bringing that up to a dwelling, I don't think would, at that point, I think he'd be better off at tearing it down and redoing it, but
Well, he can fit a trailer in right between the two buildings.
no.
Sunday afternoon.
Do what?
Move it in on Sunday
Sunday.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon.
That's what I would do.
Have a garden hose and have a pipe goes out raw sewage into the neighbor's fields.
Mhm. There was a RV there for a while, but I told him he had to take that off location.
I'll stand for a motion to allow the commercial use of structure on property with the option to use the north structure as a future dwelling unit with a 3-foot encroachment on north side alley road. Right?
I don't know if I'd go with it being a future dwelling unit, just because there's so many
Yeah.
things that would need to change. I know that's what I have here, but
Okay, so take out the future dwelling.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the special use permit at 1426 North 9th Street, along with the encroachment on the alley.
I'll second that.
All that approve,
Aye.
all that don't. One. Next. I'll accept a motion for the recommendation of streetlights.
I'll make a motion to visit the recommendation for street lighting on 17th Street and Commercial Street.
I'll second it.
James.
So we've been asked, as a result of public comments, and Commissioner Gandy to look at four different locations in regards to streetlight improvements. The first one's on South Commercial, right when you come in off of 18. It is really dark in this particular area. This is Ferguson Construction. Whenever you exit off onto South Commercial, the first streetlight that you actually run into is probably about 400 feet to the north. So we're recommending that we install 5 streetlights. These along South Commercial between Avenue R and the island are 400 feet apart, and then put an additional one down closer to that bypass exit ramp. As far as brightness, I know that as it was explained to me, most of our residential streetlights are the 150s. The 310s are what you see along Main Street, Avenue D. So really, as far as lighting, I think they kind of spread the same amount of lighting. It's just that's a very dark intersection at that
It
particular.
really is.
So whenever you look at the total annual cost, if you just go with straight 150s, it's around $500 a year. The 310s are $800. Just kind of as a rule of thumb, for each 150 light, it's $100 a year that we have to pay, and then for each 310, it's $160 a year. The next intersection that we have is Commercial on Avenue D. That one only has one light there, and I believe it is just a 150.
Yeah, it's not very bright.
We're recommending that we just add 3 more to that particular intersection, just to kind of brighten it up. This one may wind up having to be relocated. Actually, both of these may wind up having to be relocated due to the eventual construction of the multi-use trail. But however, that's actually been pushed to the next federal fiscal year by the feds. The next one was Brian Erlacher at 17th Street and Brian Erlacher, that curve. First street light that you encounter whenever you're heading to the west is right here at the end of the subdivision in the beginning of the Avenue R apartments. Then going around the curve, and then you run into some other street lights further on north. But just light this one up. I would recommend probably at least the 310s in
that
Yeah,
particular,
it is
17th
very
Street is a
dark.
really dark street. Right now, there's not a housing development in the area. This is a planned subdivision that they are working on the different plans, whether it'll be multifamily or single family. That is for future development. And then 17th and Gum, very dark. This is really, even though this is outside the city limits, the city did assume maintenance responsibility for this particular section of 17th Street as well as Gum. However, that's very, very dark. You
It's
miss
close to
it.
the new fire department.
You miss it if you're heading east or west on Gum Street. It's really easy to miss that intersection.
Oh, yeah.
So the placement of just one light out there, I think, would be justified at this time, even if it's just a 150, just to give somebody the visual indication that the intersection's coming up aside from the sign.
And so they won't run straight through.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I grew up
Yeah, we've
near
had several.
there, and there's been several people coming down 17th Street going through there.
Try to take the trail to the right.
That's why that trail exists.
That's how I got there.
They were going pretty fast, it took them that long to slow down.
Yeah, sometimes the pole got them, but
And actually, looking at the intersection, I think that the light would actually probably go on that particular
Yeah,
side.
that's what I was going to suggest. That way you see it coming from the hospital, it shines.
That's it.
That's my spiel.
so do we wanna go
There's
with
holes on both corners.
huh?
I was like, there's holes on both corners there on the south side. Southeast and southwest corner. There's holes on both sides.
Which recommendation will that's what you do? He works really kind of like you, might as well use his knowledge.
I don't know if you're looking, the 150s are on this parade right now, like you said, with being down on the end by Brian Urlacher in 17, without being anything there as far as development or anything. 310s would probably be good over there. They wouldn't hurt, brightening that up. 310 probably on the intersection on Gum also. That would brighten it up, but people see stop signs and that coming to the intersection. As far as commercial and D, definitely need light there. I think 150s would be fine, but it's, especially if you're going to have on multiple corners.
That's a very dark area.
And, yeah. And also, I know there's no lights on Avenue Art at the Hobbs Highway there, and probably 310s will work there also.
Is that what we have right there, where the cheese plant and all that is?
There are the
Are
310s.
those 310s? Yeah, I like the way that's lit.
Yeah, anywheres where there's residential or something, you probably don't want to put them because we've had people complaining about the bright lights coming in their windows. So,
That's what they make lights for.
yeah, they do. You want to try and appease everybody. So,
Right.
so that would be my recommendation on that.
But now in this commercial, you were saying 300 on those? This picture right here?
Yes, sir.
Just them ones on the corner of Commercial and D?
So the only ones that would be 150 would be the ones where there's the 4 of them on that corner?
Yeah,
Okay.
that should light it up when it is,
Yeah.
more.
You got the stop signs that are blinking,
Mm-hmm.
and also you got one on each corner, so I think that should be sufficient.
I like that.
Well, that's where you have coming down commercial there, those first couple coming down, you do have residents along that side, so you might go with the lower one there, and then do the 310s down towards the actual where intersection.
Oh, the first two run off?
Yeah, because these are residential over here on this side.
By the intersection by Ferguson's over there, I'd recommend having the bright ones.
Yes, definitely have the.
Yeah.
So the first two on Commercial off of Avenue R, Like them the 150s and then the last three, the 310s?
At that location right there?
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with
Or
it.
even
That-
three of them being,
What kind of lighting comes from like Ferguson, and do they have lights in their yard?
not a lot.
Not a lot, yeah.
But they shine inward, they don't.
Yeah, they do, but there's not much light on the road.
Yeah.
And we would put them on that side of the road, on Ferguson's side of the road?
Actually, whatever the co-op would recommend. I
Oh.
just put it on
Oh,
there, just,
okay.
what, trying to line that up to scale, I was just using
Right.
landmarks.
Are those, is that residential on the right?
Yes.
So how far away do you have to be for a 310 to not be too bright from a resident? I mean, I like the idea of having 310s
I do
there, but
too. 'Cause it
you would
goes
have to
right
line
by
them
the
up
road.
so that they wouldn't be
Are we
so
talking about down
close.
at the corner?
No,
Going off the
out there.
Or up higher?
Up higher,
Okay.
up the
So
side
that's
of the
2 or
residence.
3 how many
2
homes?
residents. And then
There's
the-
actually 3 different residents there. You have the one on the corner of our and commercial, then the one with the white roof on down, and then the next one's a sugar house.
Yeah.
Sugar house.
I mean, I know James said that isn't to scale and that isn't exactly where we would place them,
Yeah.
but if that's pretty close, I would recommend doing the 150s, those top 2, and then the 300s, these bottom 3.
Yeah, I do too.
I agree.
Yeah, because we'd have to have staking techs go out
I'd
there and
hate
check
to
it all out.
spend the
stake
money
it,
and then
scale it.
have, the first night have those residents
And you guys
be
from,
mad at us.
the guys from Lee County would probably give you an opinion too, as far as staking techs, what to put out there, and
Okay.
give you some idea.
So that would make 6 150s out of the
Yes.
9, or what, how many
No,
are at,
we only
at
make
Dead Man's Curve?
3, 4, 5, it'd make 5 150s.
1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5.
6.
Okay, 5 150s out of the
6.
1, 2, 3, 4.
3
How
on
many are at
commercial
Dead
and
Man's
D,
Curve?
and then those 2.
There was 13 last.
3.
Oh,
So 5 out of 13 is what you're saying, Crystal?
Means 8.
I've come up with 6 of the 150s.
Because you got
150, 150, 150, 310.
3 on the.
Well, I just said
Three
the
on
top 2
The top
150s.
2 is 150s, and the bottom 3
Okay.
is 300s.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine.
I think that'd be, because I know you need to slow down, but some of those people that don't know how to slow down coming around that curve, it'd be better
Better
riding.
if it's really
That's fine.
bright light. Especially when it fills up with water too.
And those existing poles already, you just put the lights up there, or will you have to consider the cost of setting poles?
We'd have to check. I mean, we need the lights.
So do they put up the breakaway poles, or do they just put up regular telephone poles made out of wood? I don't know.
We're gonna have to talk to the staking techs on that, what they recommend. I can't say what they're gonna tell you. They'll tell you one thing and they go out totally opposite, so you're better off hearing from the horse's mouth.
He's given us good recommendations.
You're talking about the text for Lee County Electric, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll make a motion, we go with the recommended light placements and go with the 5 150s at the places we discussed and the 8 310s at the places we discussed.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Next. stand for a motion.
I'll make a motion, we visit the recommendation for a nuisance building ordinance.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Crystal or James? That's his, let's call it.
So, we've had the ordinance out there, we've made several changes, some minor changes, to kind of review it. However, the target area, of course, is all the way from, going east-west from 17th all the way to Commercial. Essentially, on the northern boundary would be where Avenue C would be, the south side of Avenue C. The southern boundary would be the north side of Avenue E if it were to go across. Note this area here basically is county, so we wouldn't be able to enforce it there. Going from north to south, it's bounded by 1st Street and Love Street, all the way from where Love intersects with Main Street and all the way down to where Avenue R, Bryan Urlacher, and Main Street converge. We have reference, or the definition of the district is in the 175030, but we would definitely need to, we're targeting these particular areas. Instead of creating a new zone, it would just be established as a district up in the purpose, up in the purpose as far as this is the designated area, and it would reference the definition. Whenever you move through the maintenance requirements, of course, we have under the general maintenance requirements under L40, safe and attractive appearance. Then we would have 10% of exterior deterioration. That includes peeling paint, damaged stucco, or other deterioration from the exterior surfaces. Of course, we then have item 3, and it talks about you got to keep weeds, brush, trash, anything, basically keep the property clean, free from debris and trash, whether it's a vegetation or man-made. It has to be graffiti free, but the one recommendation that was made was that approved murals would be
Like what they put in the
added.
chamber.
Exactly. So that way somebody can say, well, no, that graffiti is a mural. It's my artistic expression. People find a way. Item 5, it does require that you have to maintain the landscaping. Of course, window and door requirements is under 6 and 7. It basically tells you that you got to have, you can't really keep any disfigured, cracked, or peeling surfaces in place for more than 60 days. You have to maintain the property, make it presentable. Windows and doors, if they're broken and you choose to cover them, you got to use plywood that precisely fits. You just don't hammer up pallets or anything like that. It needs to be painted gray or black to simulate your typical exterior window colors. And then, of course, really present a base color and any trim color in addition to your doors and windows. Of course, utilizing the other materials such as metal to secure your broken windows or doors can't stay in place for longer than 30 days. It's to motivate the property owners to essentially get it moving and ready. Also, your awnings, you got to make sure that any of the awnings, especially if it's a fabric, it's not torn or tattered. We did have an issue downtown at one point where for about 6 years there was a piece of sheet metal that was flapping in the wind. You could almost set your watch to it on 60-mile-an-hour days. And then, of course, the roof needs to be maintained so that way the structure doesn't become compromised. Of course, we also listed in here a means to abate, and as far as how notices need to get posted. Scott had asked me the day before yesterday as far as penalties. The penalties, it's actually set by the municipal judge. It can be for violations, it can be up to $500. However, we don't assess the fines, that's up to the court. So the court would set that fine, but every day there's a violation. If we go back over there and we issue a new citation, you can be cited day after day after day, but hopefully just one time we'll get.
So after it gets to the $500, that's it?
You can't charge more than $500.
But you can give another.
We could give another citation. That just
Okay.
means they have to go back to court.
Yeah.
Because unlike
There's a lot of those
traffic,
people that they don't mind
Right.
just paying $500.
Well, unlike traffic fines, like what the city had just passed with penalty assessment. It's not as simple as just mailing in your fine. With this, you actually have to make an appearance to enter a plea, whether you're guilty. If you're guilty, then the judge will tell you, well, this is what the fine is, or you can say not guilty, and that's where this gentleman to my left gets to step in.
So they could make it enough of a headache for somebody to finally say, I'm gonna do something.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what
but-
that's what I'm.
During our email exchange yesterday, there is some difficulty with that. We can't just post, we can post warnings all day long on the exterior, but when it's a citation, you have to serve that to the property owner. You just can't post it on there, and you can't really, and you can't send it by certified mail, because there's no proof that the individual actually picked up that mail, the way the judge looks at it. So what does that mean? Well, we can mail a citation, and if they show up to court, that's great, but if they don't, there's really not enough there for the judge to issue a bench warrant for failure to appear or anything. And the judge is really probably not going to put somebody in jail for a code enforcement violation for like peeling paint.
Right.
Because who has to pay for the incarceration? We do. It's $85 a day. So that is one of those things, is that with some of our vacant nuisance buildings, some owners may be local, but you also may have out-of-town owners. So there is that difficulty. Generally, whenever we send citations to owners outside of town, or even warning notices, they get on. They will eventually address it. It's just a matter of, the length of time for the mail, and there's obstacles for enforcement. There's just not a one-size-fits-all type of solution, unfortunately.
Well, let's say if somebody got hurt at let's say, we emailed, we talked about that location, is the city liable at all? That's my concern, because if something hasn't been done.
Well, I guess they could come in and look at it and say, was the city negligent in pursuing, something as far as broken glass or a sidewalk or something like that that would cause the injury. I don't know. There's always the risk that they could come in and make the case if we've known about it. The piece of sheet metal that was hanging on that building, right? Take somebody's head off. But I think we'd also have to go back and look and see if it's something that's waived under the tort claims. And so if it's not waived, the government has immunity as far as that's concerned. I think we can make a pretty good argument that it's still the obligation of the property owner. And so if we're responsible, if it's not something that's waived, or if it is something that's waived under the Tort Claims Act, our responsibility would be proportionate to our negligence versus the property owner. And 9 times out of 10, I think you could make the argument that the property owner has that, even though they're a landlord that might live in some other place, they still have an obligation to keep track of it and make sure it's not a danger to citizens, the public.
So that's just my concern, is that I don't want to have Lovington be responsible.
Well, where it gets to, if we send a notice out, it's going to be a situation where it's not been determined by the court that they are in violation or there is a nuisance. So we have a little bit of leeway there. I think where we would have a potential issue would be if we identified it and then didn't pursue it through the court system. If we said it's a health hazard or a risk, sent out the notices, got them served, but never actually went through the process of pursuing it in court, then I think we might have a little bit of liability. But I think when you balance it out, we're further ahead to take that risk and get some of those buildings cleaned up than not, because of that little bit of exposure. So. I still think it's a good idea.
On the awnings, does that include like the cloth awnings like at Old Jack's? Them are expensive. I hate to have to every time the wind blows and tears it. that's the only, I'm like, cause I know it takes a while to get them ordered and get them printed right and the cost. I don't think 30 days is long enough for something like that.
I think if they showed, you know, they were in the process, hey,
Yeah.
we got them ordered, we're waiting, yeah, I think
Right.
we could say, okay.
Hey, is this gonna affect only new properties or is it gonna go back to older properties?
All property.
Yeah.
All properties?
There's really nothing you can, to use the term, grandfather in. That totally, that totally would negate the expense of this, of
Mhm.
getting this approved, and all of the time and effort, because that's
Yeah.
where the issue lies, is with existing properties that aren't being
Some of these
maintained.
older buildings that aren't
Correct.
being taken care of.
And, on 17.50.4, the maintenance requirements at 7A, where the alley exposure shall be exempt. I kinda wanted that to go ahead and say that that they're exempt from the paint requirement only, because I don't want someone to misunderstand that and think that they're exempt from boarding it up also.
Okay.
Hmm?
You didn't have that.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't. I know how cut and
Right.
paste works.
On which one?
Don't get me started on computers.
It was under the maintenance requirements, 7A, where it talks about, at the very last of it, talks about the alley exposure shall be exempt. And it's just, A is just talking about how it's painted, but I don't want someone to misunderstand that and think they're exempt from having it boarded up
Right.
because it's in the alley. Yeah. So I just want to make sure we don't have that misunderstanding.
Well, why don't we just make them
Clarify
paint? You know they're gonna paint the front anyway.
I want the alley to be a different color.
In this, ordinance, does it say anything about, I'm trying to find it, about billboards?
No.
No, that's in a different one.
That's in a different one?
We have
Okay.
an existing.
I knew we were
Right, that is.
working on one of those also.
Yeah, that's something, and I discussed this with Crystal, I wanna hold off on
Okay.
right now, mainly because Alamogordo has tried to do it, and there's basically a hiatus on there right now. They're working with billboard owners. It didn't go over well,
Yeah.
for obvious reasons, but we wanna see where they get. They're still probably about 2 months out from bringing something back, but wanted to see what theirs was like, so if it's passed and approved, we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right, okay. Cool.
Because we do have a billboard ordinance, and it does talk about how if they become in disrepair and stuff, that we can notify the owners of the billboards and have them repaired or removed. We do have an ordinance that pertains to all that. The only thing in the ordinance of billboards that I don't like is where they can and can't be placed.
Yeah,
And we have no regulation on what size they are, how tall they are,
Double decker.
how far
like,
away
I-
apart they
I
are
think
from
some of
each
that-
other, you know.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I do want to address when we do billboards.
Definitely.
Is the billboards also considered like like say someone bought the First National Bank building and decided they wanted to paint a billboard on the side of it? Would they be allowed to do that?
We have signage, wall signs, rooftop signs, we have an ordinance completely covered those.
So we don't need to cover that in this? Okay.
So further down in that same, under maintenance, section 11, under the maintenance requirement, where it talks about, towards the end of the paragraph, taking into consideration the nature and the uses of the properties in the area, the characters of the community in which they are situated, which condition would be substantially offensive. Right in there, I wanted to add that it would, which the condition would be unsafe, unsanitary, substantially offensive, and annoying. I just wanted to add that unsafe and unsanitary in there, James. you have issues of, needles and junk in an alleyway behind a really bad place. It's
Right.
it's an unsafe and unsanitary situation,
it's
so I
good
wanted
to
to make
cover
sure
that.
that one was
How are we gonna make sure the roofs are up to snuff?
Google Earth photos.
Okay. Works for me. 'Cause I'm not coming.
If you see the water spooling around like your drain, there's a hole in the roof.
No, I might have a deal with that question.
Well, actually, when you look in a vacant building and you see ceiling tiles on the floor and stuff, you know they've got
But I mean, if they got,
that they need to take care of.
they got closed off in the front or the windows that you can't see,
Well, with this ordinance then, they're only supposed to have that for so long, and then they have to fix it, so.
Can you explain that, what you mean as far as they have to, you don't have what for so long? The windows?
If the
The
windows are
boarding
boarded.
up can only be for so long, that's in all this. Before they have
If
to
you,
actually-
if you read under 17, or I'm sorry, 0503, it's a property owned by a corporation, for out-of-area mortgagee, local property management company shall be contracted to perform monthly inspections to verify compliance.
Okay, but we were talking about if, like you said, doors and windows, they could be, you could have a piece of wood on it and it had to be painted so that it looked like a door or a window was there. And that's my confusion as far as, in that circumstance, if my windows broke and I wanted to put in a piece of plywood, but I made it attractive, painted it dark, put frame around it, maybe even went to the expense of, putting little, paint panes on it, whatever, is that it's, at some point, it still has to be replaced back with the glass.
Yes,
30 days, right?
30 days, that's what
Okay.
we have in.
Just wanted to
The
make sure.
permanent repair shall be,
So they
done in
can't
such
just
way
take a
that-
broken window and slap a piece of cardboard, yeah. Refrigerator box.
Yeah, section C
C,
underneath that
yeah.
7,
Okay.
it has
I
where it
misread-
can go for no
misread that.
longer than 30 days.
Mhm.
but what if it's like, the building across the street from me, where they have the wood over the glass to keep them from getting broken out? They're not using the building.
Right.
And
The
maybe-
ordinance specifically says that
They're
that's
gonna
not
have to take it
acceptable.
down.
They're gonna have to fix that correctly, right.
Okay.
If they want to have a broken windows, they need to get this something opened and in that store, then we'd have not vacant buildings. That's my whole goal.
Keep dreaming.
But someone has it for storage, right? There's a lot of buildings around here I've discovered have their people's
I
extended
think it's in
garages.
the middle of a family feud.
Did you guys have any other additions you wanted to make to it? Or changes that you've seen?
I just had, the 30 days for painting. It might be like a little longer because we have weather that's hard to paint.
So, once again, as long as they can prove that,
Oh, okay.
they've ordered the awning or they've actually engaged somebody to go and paint. I mean, we want to work with people. It's not going to be,
Okay.
you didn't get it done in 30 days, day 31. No, you're going to court. No, we want to work with people. They
Okay.
should- But if we put, lengthy timelines, we get nowhere.
Okay.
So,
Just as long as somebody's working with you, you can get it done.
correct.
But our weather, you can't paint one whole week straight if you're lucky. Anybody else have anything?
I don't.
So the plan moving forward with this is that if you guys give a recommendation to submit this, we'll take it to the commission for discussion. There may be a chance that this item gets brought back to you if there's any further changes that the commission
Yeah,
sees
they don't want it.
in December. And then if there isn't, then in January we would get the permission from the commission to proceed with advertisement, which advertisement we would need to be, we would have to mail this to everybody in the commercial zone. And go through the ordinance adoption process. So it may be February or March by the time that this would actually be adopted.
I'll stand for a motion.
I make the motion that we submit the ordinance of the City of Lovington, New Mexico, Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.50 urban structure nuisance to the City Council for,
With the changes.
with changes as discussed for their approval.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? Okay, do I have anything else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
We're adjourned.